The Gospel according to Matthew. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and followed Jesus. And as Jesus sat down at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come, lay your hand on her, and she will live." So Jesus got up, followed him, along with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in, took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Christ.
You may be seated. This morning, I want you to join me in a little journey down memory lane. You ready? Okay. Think back with me all the way to your high school days. I realize it's going to be an easier task for some, right, than others. For some of us, that's a bit of a lift. Now think back to the high school cafeteria. I have memories of cafeteria workers with those little hair nets. I remember tiny little milk cartons, very small, hamburgers, nachos, overcooked pizza that was cut into rectangles, of all things, and flopped onto my plastic molded tray. How about the tables? Do you remember who you used to sit with? High school can be a hard time because every day you have to choose where to eat. Is there going to be room for you at the table? Why do you choose to sit with who you do? Are they the nerdy kids, the athletic kids, the artsy kids, theater people? One unfortunate aspect of the social reality is that who you eat with can say a lot about you, about your status, your relationships, maybe your reputation. Okay, that's probably enough memory work for today. I don't want to make us spend too much time in high school memory mode. I know that can be nostalgic for some, but maybe traumatic for others. It's not the easiest time of life. But I led this exercise because in our gospel for today, we see an ancient Judean version of the American high school cafeteria. Most of the tables are filled up with your regular Jewish people who don't affiliate with any particular religious group, like the temple-oriented Levites or the politically savvy Sadducees or the radical Essenes. Matthew writes and draws a different contrast between two particular tables that I want us to focus on. First, you have the purity-minded Pharisees. Now, Pharisees are a religious group that take following the Jewish law very seriously. Their table is a very selective bunch. You only get to eat with the Pharisees if you are a Pharisee or if you know a Pharisee. No, that's the Emmaus Choir Beer Club. If you are a Pharisee or if you convert to the Pharisees. With them, you can be sure you're going to eat the right kinds of food with the right kinds of people. None of those wrong foods or wrong people are going to get close to you. That's why the Pharisees are a little bit appalled, a little bit shocked that Jesus seems to be willing to eat with just about anybody. Why does your teacher eat with the tax collectors and the sinners? They ask. Now that's one table. On the other hand, Matthew shows us the table of the tax collectors and the sinners, where Jesus is. Now we don't know exactly who was there with Jesus. Sinners is a designation that the Pharisees probably used about Gentiles, that is to say non-Jews, and prostitutes, and a whole arrangement of others who didn't live according to the law. We can imagine how they felt by being excluded by the religious leaders. Probably some mix of shame, resentment, fear, maybe resignation. Tax collectors, though, we know a little bit more about. As you may have noticed, our gospel for today starts with one particular tax collector named Matthew. Now, when you think tax collector, think with me, tax collector. Perhaps you picture someone with maybe thick, horn-rimmed glasses, maybe speaks a little nasally, a pocket protector, and a calculator right here in their hip holster, ready at any moment to calculate. But tax collectors in Jesus' day were not innocuous bean counters from the IRS. Collecting taxes in Roman-occupied Judea meant collaboration with the imperial power. For a tight-knit Jewish community, it meant that one of your own was essentially betraying you, taking your money and giving it to foreigners far away, who in turn offered you protection and peace. But it's really just protection from the Romans themselves. No wonder those tax collectors were reviled. So our gospel says that Jesus is eating with these characters because they had caught wind that there was a new rabbi in town, a teacher who didn't judge them for their collaboration with the Romans. This was new. The tax collectors and other so-called sinners had mostly gotten side-eye and condemnation from religious professionals. They knew they were judged, deemed unclean, unworthy of being in the presence of the religious elite. And yet, present is what Jesus offered them, simply and freely. This was nowhere so obvious than in Jesus sharing a meal with these folks. By eating from one common plate, Jesus affirmed their basic humanity. By sharing wine from the same cup, he showed them that they were loved and accepted by God. Through this radical act of eating, Jesus dissolves any boundaries or stigmas that these people might have experienced. Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? They asked this because for them, for the Pharisees, it was anything but self-evident that godly people like Jesus should eat with people who seemed to care little about godly things. For Jesus, though, food was never about godliness. Food was about relationship. Food was about human connection. Jesus knew that food and relationship that it represented has the power to change how people understand themselves. Jesus was making a statement. Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners. I desire mercy, covenant faithfulness, everlasting love, rather than sacrifice. Jesus knew that mercy, the welcome of God, has the mind-blowing reality of grace. It has the power to heal. And by adopting a loving, people-first model, Jesus was embodying the heart of God. Love first, eat together first, and change will follow. Tax collectors don't have the same stigma today as they used to. I'm not sure I've actually ever met a tax collector. Maybe you have. We just do an electronic transfer of our taxes and call it a day. So it makes me wonder, if Jesus came today and asked you to go to a meal with him, with tax collectors and sinners, whose table would you share? Now, depending on your station in life, your political affiliations, your circles of influence, your friendships, the answer is going to differ, right? Are they going to be election deniers or abortion activists? Are they going to be anti-vaxxers or atheists? Are they going to be acolytes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or MAGA Republicans? Or simply the unwashed, somewhat smelly, sunburnt, unhoused people that line our sidewalks? To frame it more positively, if we were to try to adopt a people-first model and live out Jesus' example of radical welcome, whom would we seek to invite to dinner? It is precisely this question that has continued to push our church to reform through the years. 50 years ago, the ELCA decided to welcome women into the pulpit, and we made a similar choice to expand the table to leaders from the LGBTQ community in 2009. Over the last few decades, we've spent time thinking about why so few people of color make the ELCA their home. We've realized that we have work to do, not just in proclaiming welcome, but repenting for ways the church has hurt communities of color. Sometimes welcome doesn't mean just extending an invitation, but apologizing for previous exclusion. Emmaus has done this work as well. If you take your little bulletin, look at the welcome statement on page 2, you will see our commitment to having a wide open table. But the work is not done when you put some words on a page. That is just the beginning. The work is ongoing. Jesus changed the world through the choices he made, which tables he chose to sit at in our ancient Judean high school cafeteria. What worlds, I ask you, what worlds can we change through our open table and the tables we choose to sit at, both metaphorical and literal? So, graduating seniors, you are starting a new phase of life. With high school over, work, college, new patterns, new opportunities are calling you forward. Statistically speaking, you have many more meals in your future than some. And my prayer for you, and actually for everyone here, is that you will eat with all kinds of different people. I hope that you will share food with people that are different from you, people that hold differing views and who hold different social economic statuses. I pray that you will share God's love through meals of all kinds, whether that is odd little rectangular squares of pizza or whatever better foods find their way before you. In a moment, we're all going to partake of the open table that Jesus provides us. And when we do, I invite us all to remember that it is in this bread and in this wine that Jesus welcomes us. Not because we have it all together, like the Pharisees, but precisely because we don't. As much as we religious folk, and we all count here, sometimes resemble the tidy and well-mannered Pharisees, ultimately, we are all sinners who have the privilege of eating at Jesus' table. This is a meal of grace. This is a gift that reminds us that food has the power to change lives and communities. I don't always know why, but I am so glad that our teacher calls us to a table of unending welcome and boundless grace. Amen.